is the teacher's role in the class? I don't know if you want to answer that question together, or if Marika wants to speak first. Do you want to make a short presentation or say something, or would you like to have questions?
The problem to answer the question is that teacher's role is changing. When you are really a flip learning teacher, your identity will change. And before you can just start to support collaboration, you need experience of that collaboration by yourself. And the best way to get that kind of experience is some kind of group where you belong. In Finland we have actually in Facebook group, we are 13,000 teachers as a member. And we share ideas of what we are doing, we ask questions. And that's very important element of that teachers will get the feeling of professional agency. And if you, in flipping you are supporting students' agency, you are supporting their identity in identity in learning process. So to answer what teachers are doing or how their role will change is that you really need to see learning through the eyes of your students. And you haven't learned to do things like that. It's the whole new thing. And even though the videos, there are some problems with videos, I actually encouraging you that make videos. Because with those videos, you can just step away. Because you know that I am teaching everything like the old days. I am doing that already. And then just open your eyes. And after a while you realize, okay, these videos is just one thing in this big pool of flip learning. And then you are in that kind of developing process of your new identity as a teacher. But it's not happening in 1 year. It takes time. And you really need collaboration. If you don't have any kind of Facebook group for flippers here, I really advise you to build one.
Also, the teacher has to be brave. And I really mean it, because in the traditional ways, a teacher could do as he always did, and what he saw when he was a child and so on. And when you are flipping, you have to let go of everything, and you have to embrace the mess. When I started out teaching flip learning, one day I found myself to be closing the door, because when I looked out throughout my class, I saw people yelling and screaming and sitting on the tables and doing all kinds of stuff that didn't look like teaching or learning. And I've always been teaching with my door open. So whenever someone walked by, they could look in and say hey and hello. And all of a sudden I closed the door because it didn't look like a proper classroom. So we have to be brave, and we have to consider the fact that learning is a mess, and sometimes learning hurts. It's difficult, and sometimes the students will get mad at you, and sometimes they will be happy, and sometimes they will be sad, and so on. And we also have to remember that we actually have to have a complete plethora of opportunities and resources to bring into class. Sometimes we should bring video into class, sometimes we should use a text, and sometimes we should use traditional teaching with the teacher and the blackboard and so on, because in certain situations the old times are actually good times. It's not that flip learning is all about new stuff, but flip learning is more or less different situations and different approaches with different students.
Excuse me, what maybe not worries me, but I think maybe some other teachers thinking on the same line is that you're afraid that you don't have enough material because the students are working on themselves and some are quick and finish the assignment and then they have to give them something else, and you have to have so much available Well, I think you have to have so much available so they can be active, all the students for the whole time. And some finish things quickly and what do you do with them and you give them something else and say, oh, look at this differently, you do this and this.
For example, in my case, I'm a lower secondary level
You
teacher.
have nothing left.
I'm a lower secondary level teacher, and the most easiest way to differentiate is offer some other course for them. For example, even though I'm lower level, I offer them also upper secondary school courses.
Yeah, you have to have a lot of material ready or
But it could be a book. It could be a book. Okay, take this one, and I will help whenever you need me.
Yeah.
Flipping doesn't
Are they
mean.
okay with this? Yeah. The students are okay with this? They like it?
Yeah, they like it.
What I did was to tell the students to make the materials for the other students sometimes, for instance. Because whenever you teach someone, you actually learn a lot. And if you have to explain what you have just learned and condense it into another material or redesign it in some way, you actually learn something new.
Yeah.
And you are probably aware of the fact that you know a lot when you have finished teaching.
Yeah.
And the same thing will happen with the students.
Yes.
And also what I did was when I started out flipping, I didn't flip everything. I was teaching Danish and I was teaching English and we had different subjects we had to cover and so on. And I started out with one of the subjects. So I could easily do and make a lot of materials on this specific thing. And what I found out was that some of the things that I did in one area I could actually use in another, even though I hadn't planned it from the beginning.
Yeah.
So I think that it's not a problem unless you tell yourself that, well, this is the last day of the summer vacation and everything has to be flipped for the next year.
Yeah.
Then you might have a problem.
In Finland,
Assignments lined up.
in Finland, it's quite common that students are starting just with textbooks.
Yeah.
But and in that case, it should remember that flip learning is not self-study.
No. Yeah.
Because we are supporting self-regulation, and the most important thing is co-regulation. And how you build the whole collaboration system, even though they are doing their own books, you have to take care of collaboration.
Yeah. Yes, of course.
And the biggest problem in the beginning was that students didn't ask me anything. They were just quiet and be saying that I don't know anything. Hopefully the teacher doesn't realize that I'm so weak in this math. But after breaking that culture, showing what really is math learning, the best one show is that the competence in math, meaning that you ask questions. Okay, I can ask questions in my own level. And that kind of culture takes time. And if you come in to the classroom and there is flip learning, you can see, oh, there is nothing. Everyone's just doing things and teacher is just helping them along way. But it's difficult to take that culture and bring to the other class. In every new class, for example, which I will take, I need to build the learning culture. And it takes time. It takes at least 2 weeks, can take 2 months to build the situation that they really understand what is the point of this whole system. And the most important thing is that they need to trust you differently. In the old days, you just were a poster or that kind of person. But when you will be a tutor, you are just helping them learn. And the first thing is that they really need to have some goals. In my learning culture, some students have different goals than the others, but they really need to have some goals and they really need to make some choices. And then you just help them to receive what they really want.
What about letting them flip?
explain to other students. If you have the technology,
Yeah.
for example, because that's something I'm very fond of. When they explain, because they have the language.
They have language.
Yeah.
It's,
Student understands students. So not the teachers always.
And that they are not using that language if you are telling everything to perfect. That's the biggest problem in traditional teaching or with videos. If you explain everything, they just follow like a guideline what you have told them. They are not using their own ideas, and they don't talk about how did you understand this one.
But you're thinking that the students should teach the students.
yeah.
With videos,
By making videos, and for example, in iPads.
I told my students to make videos, for
In
instance.
explain everything, for example.
At one point of time, I had 2 different classes, and I taught them the same thing in 2 different cities. I told the students in one city to teach the other students, and vice versa. And it was very successful. And all I had to do was drink coffee. More or less.
I know a school where it is a regulation. If you have a question as a student, you first go to other students to ask, and if you are not finding the answer, then you go to the coach.
And this kind of thing,
Find the answer.
yeah, this is a good example about situation when you are start to create the learning culture. It could be the rule that please ask somebody else first, and then just I will be the final one to ask. So this kind of systems you perhaps need
Yeah.
in the building process.
And actually, that's also an example of a design.
And
That because you design how you want to scaffold the students. First level support is another student. Second level support is the teacher, for instance. So this is scaffolding, but it's also a classroom culture that we can rely on each other and we can ask each other questions without being considered stupid and so on.
And you have a question, why is it football play? Because for me, all we were talking about is the thing of become the students' autonomy.
Yeah.
And I have worked a lot with students' autonomy, and I'm confused with. I use the flippant
If you have
expression for what we are talking about.
if you already have learner-centered learning culture and you support the autonomy, you don't need flipping anything. You don't need to flip. You already have that. What flipping is made for. Flipping is a theory of change. It helps teachers to focus on more learning instead of teaching. But
Yeah.
if you are already focusing, you really don't need flipping anything.
And okay, I have another understood of the expression of flipping, and I know the changing to get the students' autonomy. It is a change. The role of the teacher is changed. You're not. I'm always saying, and I have nothing to do, and the students are working. Then I'm fine.
Actually, it's a question that I have been asked a number of times. Traditionally, when we're talking about flipping, we're looking at these guys, Bergman and Sam from the United States, and the flipping is very clear in their situation because they flipped the school with the homework and so on.
Take out.
But if we take, if we look at it and take a Nordic or our take on the subject, then it's probably not that clear anymore. And in Denmark we have a professor which is very well known called Jeppe Bundsgaard. And I talked to him at some point of time and he said, well, Peter, you're taking a very, very bad term and you're putting something very good into it. And I talked to Roland, the guy who I wrote a book with, and we talked about it, and we actually agreed that we are hijacking a term and using a term as an excuse of doing something else. So, in our way of thinking, then flipping is not flipping the physical room, but it's the flip between spaces, and it's the flip between understandings, and it's a way of doing a lot of things at the same time. So you flip between students teaching students, and you flip between the teacher teaching students, and you flip between video as a text, and you flip between a book as a text, and you flip between collaborative learning and cooperative learning, and so on.
And you find a new expression for it.
The problem is that there is no official way of saying flipped learning is this. It's not as if we are. It's not. It's always. It's easy to say. Well, we know what scaffolding is because Dewey told us scaffolding is this and that 50 years ago or 100 years ago, and they have been written a number of books and so on. And maybe in 50 years we all know what flipped learning is. But at this point of time, Marika has her vision of flipped learning, and I have my vision of flipped learning, and maybe you have your vision of flipped learning. So we have to build the term by ourselves, and we have to agree of something which is common between these understandings of the term. And maybe a workshop like this, and maybe a gathering like this could help. But
in my PhD, I'm actually interested in agency and identity of those teachers who have flipped 5 years ago. How they think of learning is changed. And I actually argue that flipped learning, in flipped classroom you flipped between time and space. But in flipped learning you flipped or challenge your pedagogical view of learning. Teaching and learning, it's going deeper, and it means that if you are flipped learning teacher, you are not really ready. You are just you actually want to learn more and more and more, and you try to find out how I can better support students' learning. And you are actually the biggest learner in the whole process. And in this self-scaffolding, in my theory, I divide it into 3 pieces. Expert scaffolding, what teachers can do. They have huge of knowledge. And then there are reciprocal. Students are changing the roles. I'm teacher now, and after 5 I'm a learner. But the whole key is self-scaffolding, which is similar that with metacognition. Self-scaffolders can ask questions from themselves. They can discuss with themselves how I will learn, what I should do that I will learn now something. And you cannot receive that kind of self-scaffolding skills if you don't build that kind of culture in the class that they are practicing reciprocal scaffolding. They need to practice in co-regulation so that they will be someday those who can just learn by themselves. And that's the theoretical some theoretical expression of
what function have, for example, project learning, to put up a project and the students are solving this project in this.
It's quite similar, but the biggest difference is that in project learning you really have all this material. You are just starting the process, and you just try to find somewhere extra material where to learn. But in flipped learning you have just this kind of level where you can just go higher or do something else, but it's like a second order scaffolding. Teachers offers you something, But if you have, for example, in flip learning, if some of my students would come to me and say that they would like to do some project, I would say, okay, go away and you can skip all these. So like in your book, I really like the idea that flip learning is like an umbrella. It takes quite a lot inside of that umbrella.
But project learning could be a part of flip learning. And cooperative learning and collaborative learning and all kinds of different ways of thinking of learning could be a part of flip learning.
And some teachers in Finland asking, may I teach at all? If I wanted to teach, is it allowed? And I would say, of course, if you have to. If the student asks you, please teach me, then you have to teach. And just give what she is wanting at this moment. So the biggest is that you are not offering the same for all. Your most important thing is to see the level where the students are and help them learn from their own zone of proximal development, where the learning is possible. You will help them. For example, in math, even though in 9th grade, those students who are not those advanced, they are doing exercises from 7th grade books. It's no use them to do exercises from that books, because if they don't know, for example, some basic rules of math, they can't do. Learning has to be happened in every student's own zone of proximal development. And the biggest problem in traditional teaching is that if the teacher chooses the level, it will be someone too high and for someone too low. And that waste of potential of learning.
There is one more question here. Do potential teachers like this idea? Have you any idea of that?
Potential teachers.
No, just teachers.
This question is like this.
So student teachers, for instance.
For instance, I understand it like that.
In my experience, yes, they do like it. And they question me why they are not being taught like that themselves when they go to the university college. Because they are being taught very traditionally, with traditional thinking and ways of doing stuff, and then in some tiny moments, a guy like me enters the room and I shout and I scream and I wave my arms and I tell them, well, you could do things differently. And remember the students and remember the kids and so on. And they really enjoy the idea. But I also experience in real life, at least in Denmark, that whenever the student teachers go into real life and act like teachers or become teachers, it's very difficult for them to do what they want to do because they are restricted by time. And they find it difficult to, they are asking me the same question as you are. When will I have enough resources, and are my videos good enough, and well, I'm making mistakes in this video, could I use it? And they think that everything has to be perfect, as if it came from a publisher or something like that. But in real life, bad videos are good videos.
One of my teacher students actually cried and said to me that this is just rubbish. How anyone could teach like this? But after practicing 20 hours in my class, she realized and said in the final session that thank you that you opened her eyes for that what is learning. And it is actually really demanding for those young teachers who are coming. But for those who are very young, I actually advise that please do videos, because it's so important that you are practicing also teaching. You will figure out how would you teach this thing, but those who have done teaching several years, they have that huge package of experience of that. So I think the videos are not so mandatory for those teachers, but it really, because they didn't see, for example in this case, she didn't see what she really should do in the class. And so
The problem is that whenever you're a new teacher, you enter an old room when you go into school. It's very, very difficult to do something new, because we all know how teaching looks like. And we all know how a teacher, you could probably spot a teacher when you walk down the street. And
with a younger one, those who are 12 years old, sometimes I have 2 hours in math, and those who are not very interested in math, it's too long. No, and with those students I will ask that, okay, would you like to do, for example, English exercises or biology or something else? If they don't want to do math anymore, I allow them to do something else in my class. They really don't do that, because I'm their math teacher, and they really want to show that they are doing math in this class. But these are quite important things to break the illusion what you should do in math class. You should learn. And if you are tired to learn math, you can learn something else. And I might help you, or you can ask help for other members. But in the beginning, when you are creating the culture, you can't control everything. If there is somebody who are playing computer games, perhaps after 3 weeks he's not playing computer games anymore, because the illusion that you can just sit there and listen, something would happen. In traditional teaching, teachers are going to the next chapter and doing things here, and the students have illusion that they have learned something. But in flipped learning, if you don't have any marks in your notebooks, nothing learning has happened. You can't pass this course because you haven't learned anything. And after a while, they really realize that, okay, I really need to do something. And in the upper secondary school, I had a problem that some of my students just take the fail grade from courses. And in Finland, you can take 30% of the courses can be failed, which is not a very good idea. But in this way, when we are flipping, I don't give them mark fail. You haven't finished this course. And that way I really make them learn, and show that you really need to learn, and I'm here to help you whenever you like. I can wait, for example, half a year, if that's fine for you. But if you are trying to support intrinsic motivation, you can't control a lot. You can create opportunities, and the first thing is that there has to be nice to be in the math class, for example. The feelings are the most important thing in the learning. Okay.
That's really amazing. Do you have any more questions? We are running out of time now, as always.
Yeah, it's about the homework. Is it more homework and flipped learning, or is it the same, or less?
In lower secondary level, I have advised that you don't need to take any homeworks. They really don't need to read the chapter at home. They don't really need to look videos. Quite often they do so. And those one who really want to be advanced level, they are taking homeworks, because they are wanting to do more. But in lower secondary level, I think we have enough time in school to learn things. And there are plenty of research about flipped learning and flipped classroom, and they all are saying that students there are no need of homework timing so much than in traditional teaching, because the learning happening here.
Lower secondary level is up to which age?
12 to 15.
15.
What I do and what I see is that it's very different. Some teachers will hand out homework and tell the students to read or watch or listen or whatever, while others will say, well, we can manage to grab everything in school. Also in Denmark we had a reform of the school system a couple of years ago, and today the students have to be in school until 4 o'clock, where they earlier they could leave around 2 or something like that. And some of the hours that the students are staying in school is with a person who's not a teacher person, but a person who can help them or be with them. So homework is not traditional homework. Homework could be something that you do when you're finished with your math lessons with the other person. And what I did was that some students should do homework while others shouldn't. It depended on what they did, and it depended on what they were working with, and it depended on the kid or the child. Because I knew that some of them wouldn't do it anyways because they had some kind of difficulties, or they had an after-school job or something like that. But when they should do homework, I always told them that they had to do it because they had a point with it. It should not be something that you read or watch because Peter tells you to, but it should be something that you read or watch because you have to use it to something.
And there are differences between subjects. In some subjects, for example, history, you would like that, okay, you will read the same book, for example, and after which we are talking together. But for example, in math, it's quite common that the learning is self-paced. And you should remember when you are creating flip learning culture that if, for example, if you make videos mandatory, you need to control that also. And sometimes it's not good starting point that you are controlling a lot. So the better option is that they realize, okay, now I just don't know what they are talking about, or etc. They realize, okay, perhaps it's the best solution for my problem that I will do something at home.
But if you're, for instance, a Danish teacher, then sometimes you have to read a book.
Yeah.
And we don't spend 50 hours in school reading a book.
No.
It's something that the kids will do at home or...
Excellent. Now it's a little bit past the time and I have to stop you. I'm very sad to do that because I love listening to you. Even though I've been trying to flip for 5 years now, I'm learning so much each time I meet you. I've been so lucky to meet you more than today, and I hope that all of you get something out of this, something you can use. And of course, if you have questions on the hallway or later on, I believe all of us, we would, and maybe you could answer some questions, or other people. Let's talk to each other.
Of course.
Of course.
Also, most of you will probably be able to read what is written in the Danish homepage. So fliplearning.dk, there are resources and texts and so on. And you're always welcome to contact me.
Say with me, the biggest part of my homepage is written in Finnish, but research part is in English. Some of the research are perhaps hard to read because they are made for researcher, not teacher. But for example, when the book is finished, I can take some chapters there. And the whole idea of the book was that because I have started to do PhD as a reason that I would like to understand what motivation really is. I have the feeling that my students are more motivated in flip learning, and I wanted to understand why. And I feel that now when I have got some answers, I really need to explain those at the level of teachers, that they can really understand what is happening there and get the agency and have some ideas and do things together. But the biggest advice is that do collaboration and have an experience of power of collaboration and your own professional agency.
And be brave, right? I want to thank you, and you can give them applause for today.